Body fluids and circulation is one of the biggest scoring chapters in NEET biology. It covers blood, clotting, the heart, and the entire circulatory system. And NEET pulls questions from every single corner of it. In the next few minutes, we're covering all of it: what blood is actually made of, how your blood clots, the 4 chambers and valves of your heart, exactly how the cardiac cycle works second by second, how blood travels through your entire body, and the disorders NEET tests most. Keep a pen ready for the numbers. There are a lot of them here, too. Let's get started. Let's start with what blood actually is. It's a fluid connective tissue made of 2 parts: the matrix, which is plasma, and the formed elements, which are your red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets. If you centrifuge a sample of blood, it separates into 3 visible layers. On top, pale yellow plasma, making up about 55% of the volume. In the middle, a very thin white band called the buffy coat, less than 1%, made of white blood cells and platelets, and at the bottom, deep red packed red blood cells, about 45%. The average adult has 5 to 5.5 liters of blood, roughly 7 to 8% of total body weight. And blood does a lot. It transports oxygen and carbon dioxide, delivers nutrients, helps regulate body temperature, and handles both immune defense and clotting. Zooming into that plasma layer, what's actually in it? About 90 to 92% is simply water, acting as the primary solvent and transport medium for everything else. The remaining 6 to 8% is mostly fibrinogen, globulins, and albumins, together called plasma proteins. Fibrinogen is essential for the clotting cascade we'll get to shortly. Globulins are your antibodies, handling immunity, and albumins maintain osmotic balance, which is what keeps your blood pressure stable. Here's a neat favorite distinction to remember. Serum is just plasma with the clotting factors removed. That's why serum doesn't clot. Now, lymph. As blood flows through capillaries, some plasma leaks out into the surrounding tissue spaces, becoming interstitial fluid. Some of that fluid enters small lymphatic capillaries and becomes lymph. It's a colorless fluid, with lower protein content than plasma, but rich in lymphocytes. Lymph does 3 main jobs. It drains excess fluid out of tissues back into the bloodstream. It absorbs fats from the small intestine through structures called lacteals inside the intestinal villi, and it delivers lymphocytes into the blood for immune defense. Quick way to remember it? Lymph is plasma minus red blood cells and the large plasma proteins, plus a much higher concentration of lymphocytes. Now the 3 formed elements themselves. Red blood cells, or erythrocytes, number 5 to 5.5 million per cubic millimeter, live for about 120 days, and they're non-nucleated and biconcave, a shape built specifically to carry as much hemoglobin as possible for oxygen transport. White blood cells, or leukocytes, are far fewer, 6,000 to 8,000 per cubic millimeter, but they're nucleated, live from hours to a few days, and handle immune defense, including squeezing out of blood vessels through a process called diapedesis. Platelets, or thrombocytes, number 1.5 to 3.5 lakh per cubic millimeter, survive 7 to 10 days, and are actually just cell fragments budded off from giant cells called megakaryocytes. Their job is to release clotting factors. White blood cells aren't all the same. There are 5 distinct types, and NEET loves asking you to rank them by abundance. Neutrophils are the most common, at 60 to 65%, and they're phagocytic, engulfing pathogens directly. Lymphocytes come next at 20 to 25%. These are your B cells and T cells, running your adaptive immunity. Monocytes are 6 to 8%, and they mature into macrophages. Eosinophils are just 2 to 3%, active against allergic reactions and parasites. And basophils are the rarest, at 0.5% to 1%, releasing histamine, serotonin, and heparin. The classic memory trick for the order: most to least. Never let monkeys eat bananas. Let's do a quick check on blood and its formed elements. Pause and try this one. Your ABO blood group is defined by which antigens sit on your red blood cells and which antibodies float in your plasma. Group A has the A antigen and anti-B antibodies, so it can donate to A and O. Group B has the B antigen and anti-A antibodies, donating to B and O. Group AB has both antigens and no antibodies at all, which makes AB the universal recipient, able to receive from anyone. And Group O has no antigens but both antibodies, making O the universal donor, since there's nothing on its cells for any recipient's immune system to attack. Here's a classic NEET trap built entirely on the Rh factor. It happens when an Rh-negative mother is carrying an Rh-positive fetus, and it specifically shows up in the second pregnancy, not the first. During the first delivery, some fetal Rh-positive blood mixes with the mother's blood, and her immune system produces anti-Rh antibodies in response. Those antibodies stay in her system. In a second Rh-positive pregnancy, those same antibodies cross the placenta and start destroying the fetal red blood cells, causing severe anemia and jaundice. This is Erythroblastosis Foetalis. It's prevented by injecting the mother with anti-Rh antibodies, branded as ROGAM, right after the first delivery, before her own immune system gets the chance to build its own. Now, how does a cut actually stop bleeding? It's a 5-step cascade. First, injury. Damaged tissue and activated platelets release thromboplastin, also called tissue factor. Second, that triggers an enzyme complex that activates prothrombinase, also called thrombokinase, and this step needs calcium ions. Third, prothrombinase converts inactive prothrombin into active thrombin. Fourth, thrombin converts soluble fibrinogen into insoluble fibrin threads. And fifth, that fibrin network physically traps red blood cells and other formed elements, forming the clot, also called the coagulum. A few more pieces complete the picture. Heparin is a natural anticoagulant, produced by basophils and mast cells, and it prevents blood from clotting inside intact vessels when it shouldn't. Plasmin is the enzyme responsible for fibrinolysis, breaking down the fibrin mesh once a wound has healed and the clot is no longer needed. And calcium is essential at almost every single step of the cascade we just covered. One more high-yield fact. Your liver needs vitamin K to synthesize prothrombin along with clotting factors 2, 7, 9, and 10. And here's a definition NEET likes to test. A clot that stays put inside an intact vessel is called a thrombus. If it breaks loose and travels through circulation, it's now called an embolus. Quick check on blood groups and clotting. Pause the video and think it through. Let's move to the heart itself. It has 4 chambers, 2 atria on top, which are thin-walled and simply receive incoming blood, and 2 ventricles below, which are thick-walled because they have to actively pump blood out. The interventricular septum completely separates the left and right sides, so oxygenated and deoxygenated blood never mix. And here's a detail NEET loves. The left ventricle's wall is about 3 times thicker than the right ventricle's, because the left side has to pump blood all the way around the body against high systemic resistance, while the right side only has to push blood a short distance to the lungs. 4 valves keep blood flowing in one direction only. The tricuspid valve sits between the right atrium and right ventricle, preventing backflow into the right atrium during systole. The bicuspid or mitral valve sits between the left atrium and left ventricle, doing the same job on the left side. The pulmonary semilunar valve sits between the right ventricle and the pulmonary artery, stopping blood from flowing back into the right ventricle. And the aortic semilunar valve sits between the left ventricle and the aorta, stopping backflow into the left ventricle. The heart wall itself is built from 3 distinct layers. The epicardium is the outermost layer. It's actually the visceral layer of the pericardium, the sac that surrounds the heart. The myocardium is the thick middle layer, made of cardiac muscle cells, and it's the layer doing the actual contracting. And the endocardium is the innermost layer. A thin endothelial lining that's in direct contact with the blood inside the chambers. Your heart generates its own electrical rhythm through a specific conducting pathway. It starts at the SA node, the sinoatrial node, sitting in the upper right wall of the right atrium. This is your natural pacemaker, generating auto-excitable impulses at 70 to 75 beats per minute. That signal travels to the AV node, the atrioventricular node, in the lower left corner of the right atrium, near the interatrial septum. This is your pace setter, and it deliberately delays the impulse by about 0.1 seconds, giving the atria time to finish contracting before the ventricles start. From there, the signal travels down the bundle of His and out through the Purkinje fibers, spreading rapidly through the walls of both ventricles. Time for a quick check on heart structure and its conducting system. Pause and answer. One full cardiac cycle takes 0.8 seconds, and it has 3 distinct phases. Joint diastole is the longest phase, at 0.4 seconds. Every chamber is relaxed, the AV valves are open, and blood passively fills the ventricles, accounting for about 70% of ventricular filling. Atrial systole is next, just 0.1 seconds. The atria contract and push the remaining 30% of blood into the ventricles. And ventricular systole takes 0.3 seconds. The ventricles contract forcefully. The AV valves snap shut, producing the first heart sound, and the semilunar valves open to eject blood out into the pulmonary artery and aorta. Those valve closures are exactly what produce your 2 heart sounds. S1, the lub, is the closure of the AV valves, tricuspid and bicuspid, right at the start of ventricular systole. It's low-pitched and lasts a bit longer. S2, the dub, is the closure of the semilunar valves at the start of ventricular diastole, higher-pitched and shorter. From here, 3 key formulas. Stroke volume equals N diastolic volume minus N systolic volume, roughly 70 milliliters. Cardiac output equals stroke volume times heart rate, about 70 milliliters times 72 beats per minute, giving roughly 5,000 milliliters, or 5 liters per minute. And pulse pressure equals systolic blood pressure minus diastolic blood pressure. A normal 120/80 gives a pulse pressure of 40 millimeters of mercury. Humans have double circulation, 2 separate loops, both starting and ending at the heart. The pulmonary circuit carries deoxygenated blood from the right ventricle through the pulmonary artery to the lungs, where it picks up oxygen, then returns as oxygenated blood through the pulmonary veins into the left atrium. The systemic circuit carries that oxygenated blood from the left ventricle through the aorta out to every body tissue, then returns as deoxygenated blood through the vena cava into the right atrium. There's one more special route worth knowing: the hepatic portal system, a unique vein that carries nutrient-rich blood straight from the GI tract to the liver before it ever rejoins general systemic circulation. An electrocardiogram, or ECG, records the heart's electrical activity as 3 main waves. The P wave represents atrial depolarization, the electrical signal that triggers contraction of both atria. The QRS complex represents ventricular depolarization, the much larger signal that triggers ventricular contraction. And it's large enough that it actually masks the atria's repolarization happening at the same time. And the T wave represents ventricular repolarization, the ventricles electrically resetting back to a relaxed state before the next cycle begins. 3 types of vessels, each built for a different job. Arteries carry blood away from the heart, and they need to withstand high pressure, so they have a narrow lumen and a thick muscular wall, the tunica media. Veins carry blood back toward the heart at much lower pressure, so they have a wide lumen and a thin wall. But they make up for the low pressure with valves that prevent blood from flowing backward. Capillaries just connect arterioles to venules, and they're built for exchange, not transport. A single layer of endothelium, no muscular wall, and no valves at all. Last quick check. This one's on cardiac output. Pause and calculate it. Your heart rate isn't fixed. It's constantly being adjusted by your nervous and endocrine systems. The medulla oblongata is the main control center, working through the autonomic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system increases heart rate, increases the strength of each contraction, and increases cardiac output overall. This is your fight or flight response. The parasympathetic nervous system, through the vagus nerve, does the opposite, decreasing heart rate and cardiac output to keep you calm at rest. And hormonally, adrenaline and noradrenaline, released from the adrenal medulla, also boost cardiac output during stress. Let's finish with the disorders NEET tests most. Hypertension is a persistently high blood pressure, at or above 140/90, which damages blood vessels in the heart, brain, and kidneys over time. Atherosclerosis, or coronary artery disease, is a buildup of fat, cholesterol, and fibrous tissue as plaque, narrowing the coronary artery and reducing blood flow. Angina pectoris is temporary chest discomfort caused by inadequate oxygen reaching the heart muscle, usually triggered by exertion or stress. Myocardial infarction, a heart attack, is a sudden, complete blockage of a coronary artery, causing sudden death of heart muscle cells. And heart failure is the heart's inability to pump effectively enough to meet the body's needs, often causing congestion in the lungs. One more distinction worth locking in. Heart failure means the heart isn't pumping effectively. Cardiac arrest means the heart has completely stopped due to an electrical rhythm collapse. And a heart attack means heart muscle has been damaged from an inadequate blood supply. 3 different things that often get confused, and that's the entire chapter. Body fluids and circulation, fully covered, top to bottom. If this helped you lock in the numbers and the traps NEET loves to test, hit like, subscribe, and drop a comment telling me which chapter you want covered like this next. See you in the next one.